All right, so this should be the last installment for the comic coloring thing. And what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to add a photographic background into your image and also how to add a texture that is selective. So a photographic texture that covers part of something or fills part of a space, and then how to give your character some shadows. So first things first, photographic background. So I have found a street scene. Obviously you want to have something high resolution, whatever you're going to use. And so we can see this here. I'm going to zoom back a little bit. I want to make sure that the size of my characters and the size of my background match. Right now, Batman's feet are on the same level as the lamppost, which means he's as tall as the lamppost, and I don't think he's 12 feet tall. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to take my street scene here, and I am going to enlarge it. But before I'm going to do that, I did notice before, and this is something you should pay attention to, that when I did my lighting and my shadowing, I made my light coming from up here and the shadows down on this side, and that is the exact opposite of my photograph. But that's super easy to fix. I'm just going to take my photograph, look at my dimensions, so it's just a little bit wider than a perfect square, and flip it, just like flipping pages in a book. So there we go. And now I'm going to take this, hold my shift button down, and I'm going to enlarge this up so that it's more realistic size. I want a little bit of that lamp in there because I like having that light source. So there we go. So this is a little bit behind Batman, and so now it's a little bit farther away, and I think this is a more better size. So I can double click there, and that's it. Now, the problem I have with this is that when I put it behind my color, can't see it. So this is really easy to fix. I go to my color layer, I go to my magic wand, or W, and since I want to select this white against the black outline, I'm going to make this 100 because that white on black I want a high tolerance, otherwise I'll get a little white border all the way around my figures. So I click on the white. I had contiguous unchecked, so what it did is it just grabbed all the white in the characters. Don't want to do that. So Command D for deselect, check contiguous, click the background white, come in here. To add to my selection and grab these areas, I'm going to hold my shift button down. Bam, bam, bam. Cool, all the white selected. Hit delete, Command D, good to go. All right, so there's your background photograph if you need to have a background photograph. So for the texture here, I'm going to bring this carbon fiber texture in to cover Batman's armored areas. So once again, I'm going to enlarge this, holding my shift button down to keep my proportions the same, not that it's a big deal on this texture, and I need it to be big enough that it covers all the areas that I want to use. Double click on it. All right, let's make that invisible for a second. So what I'm going to do is on his lines layer, because I can't select by color. If I select by the flat color, it'll get everything, and I don't want his cape. And if I select on the color in here, it's got the shadows. So I'm going to use the line layer. It's going to take me a little bit. So I'm going to go to my wand. Once again, tolerance at 100 because I'm doing black and white lines. And I will click these areas, hold my shift button down. Oops, don't want that one. Command Z, shift button down. And since he's got a whole bunch of little shapes, this will take a minute. So let me pause. There we go. Now I think I have everything. I think I've got a couple spots in here. Like I know I have a couple spots in here that I don't want to include, but this is still going to be easier. I think I have everything, okay, with a little bit of extra. So I go to the layer that has the carbon fiber on it. From my selection, I copy, Command C, I paste, Command V, and it puts all that carbon fiber on its own layer. Now it's actually very easy for me to see if I got a little bit extra. So for instance, I did. Now on this layer, there's nothing else, so I go to my eraser, hard-edged eraser, and remember there's only carbon fiber on this layer, so I can't, for instance, erase her gloves. So I'll go through and I'll get this stuff. Remember that trick with the shift? You can hold your shift button down and it will connect straight lines in between those 2 points. And this is sort of an easier way to clean up a couple things that I don't want. For instance, the yellow little details in his gloves, those are gone too. So make my brush a little bit smaller. Shift, bang, bang, bang. Like so. And you can always turn this off and on to look at it. So yeah, I don't want any of that. So let me pause this to finish this up. Now, by the way, I noticed I missed a little section here, so not a big deal. I'm going to select that. So I can go onto the line layer, grab that section, turn the main thing, carbon fiber texture back on, go to that layer, hit copy paste, Command C, Command V, and now it's on this layer. I go to this layer, right click on the name of the layer, and I just choose merge down. This merges it with the layer below it that had that little scrap left over, and bang, there we go. So I could also get the bat symbol there, but I'm going to just assume that maybe that's some sort of decal I put on top. Just to give a bit of variety, I'll leave it smooth. Okay, so it looks like I've got all my stuff done. Excellent. So this is super easy. I take this, I have it in front of my color layer, and by the way, I'm going to take this texture and move it down under my flat color layer. I call this putting it in the basement. I basically put it behind all this other stuff I'm going to use. It's behind the street scene, so I really don't need it. So take this, I'm going to call this body armor. And we're going to change the layer mode. We're going to change this from normal. We have a couple different options. I could go to overlay, which makes it look like those colors are overlaying that, and it will make it sort of transparent. And I could also go to multiply. These will have slightly different effects. The multiply made it a little bit darker, but that's cool. With either one of these things, if I think the texture is too strong, I just go to opacity, and I turn it down and make it a little more subtle. And there we go. We have photographic texture overlaid over something else. And as I said, you can use this wherever you want. Sometimes you only want a background in a small area, and that would work for that. So last thing, we're going to make some shadows on these guys. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. I'm going to make a layer above the street scene, but behind my color layer. And I'm going to call this shadows. Shadow. All right. So the shadow is being cast from the street lamp. I'm going to decide. I'm going to use a lasso tool. Now, the shadows are going to come from their feet, is probably the best way to think about it, and the cape's casting a shadow too. So don't worry about getting it exactly right because you can't tell exactly what it's going to be. You can kind of guesstimate a little bit. And I know the shadow is going to be coming out low and in front of them. And actually, I think the shadow from Batman, well, it might cover her, it might not. There, so I'm going to go back up to her feet, and then I'm going to say there's the shadow from his cape, and make it a little bit uneven. As I said, don't worry if you can't get it right. No one else can tell if you got it right either. So that's the shadow from him, and this is sort of the shadow from her, and they're combining together. So what I do, go to my paint bucket, which remember is sort of hidden here, black, and I fill it. And you're like, that's ridiculously stupid. That looks way too dark. That's okay. I deselect that, and I go to my opacity, and I turn it down a little bit. Now it looks a little bit better. Now, however, by the way, you can actually kind of match this. Look at shadows in other parts of the picture. There's a shadow under the car back there. Since the lamp has a light, it's not really casting much of a shadow of itself. So that looks reasonably dark. And then my last little trick is I'm going to go up to my filters. I'm going to choose blur. And I like Gaussian. It sort of goes in all directions at once. So go to blur, and if you zoom out here a little bit, it's down at the bottom of the picture, of course. There's the shadow. And you can see this is how many pixels of that shadow is going to blur out on. So if I have it on a couple, it's going to be really, really minor. If I put it up really high, it's going to go stupid soft. So find one that you feel comfortable with, hit OK, and there's your shadow. And once again, you might want to just kind of tweak the opacity a little bit. There we go. And voila, shadows. That's it.